fantastic things that are happening in the kingdom of Shlomo. He's the leader. He started at a young age at 12. We learn about what type of gigantic number of horses he has. And we wanted to say that he has a horse ready for the time of war, like it says, he wrote himself in Mishlei, Sus Muchan Leyom HaMilchama, maybe explaining why he has such a wide number of horses. And second, we started learning that socially, economically, the country is at a new height that we've never seen before. That opened up Parak 5. And things are going so well socially and economically, and of course spiritually. It goes without saying. And then we started talking about the wisdom of Shlomo in verse 9 to 4. And we learned that it entails things above and beyond science. For instance, things that have to do with B'nai Kedem. We're talking about astrology. Okay? That's what Rashi brings. And then we get to that in verse 11, we're told, Vayechkam mikol adam. He's the wisest man of all men. By the way, God fulfills his promise to Shlomo. He asks for wisdom. And Chazal understand that who are the most wisest men? We're talking here about 4 prophets that are mentioned here, going back to the children of Zerach. Some of you remember Zerach was the son of Yehuda, the son of Yaakov Avinu, and 4 names are mentioned that he's even smarter than those 4. Who are they? These are the ones that, according to Chazal, prophesied in Egypt. Their names are, he's wiser than Eitan Ezrachi, Heman, Vechalkol, Vidardar. If you follow, and what we're reading right now, B'nai Machol. So these people knew and were able to find in their foundations of writing a lot of Mizmorim. We see these names in Tehillim, and apparently some of their psalms are adopted in Tehillim, and that even the Leviim would sing them on the Duchan when they're standing up and singing for Israel. So we have Eitana Mizrachi, Maskil, Heman. Some of you know this. So the Midrash Haggadah that Rashi brings here says that his wisdom is even greater than those 4. That apparently they were well noted for their chokhmah when they were in Mitzrayim. Now, when it talks about that he's even wiser than B'nai Kedem, that's going east, that's going towards India, that's going towards maybe even Mitzrayim. They were talking about the power of magic, koch kishuf. People believed in these powers of magic, which we believe that God allowed to develop in the world as a force of defilement, koch hatumah. And the Rambam, although says they're not true, but there are other shitot that there are these type of forces in the world, the powers of sorcery, powers of magic, which are tameh. We are to rely on God, trust God, serve God through the prophets, find out the future through the prophets and not through people with a magic ball and a crystal ball and so on and so forth. And Shlomo HaMelech was able to tap on to these evil powers and convince others that it's not true and so on and so forth. That's one of the commentaries, if I'm not mistaken, what he's saying here. Furthermore, we get to Pasuk Yud Bet, chapter verse 12. Vayidaber shloshet alafim mashal. Shloshet alafim mashal. Okay? 3,000 mishalim, proverbs, analogies, wisdom, literature. Shlomo HaMelech had the Mikra here notes we're talking about different types of literature. And some of them are, one meaning is that a mashal here is a pitgam. It's an expression of an explanation. Others call it a prophetic speech. And some say it's poetry of divine inspiration, which would explain the writing of Tehillim, the writing of Mishlei. And these are part of the 3,000 that he would know in depth in the world, not only about science, about literature and other things. And it says, Vayi Shiro, how many thousand? Chamisha va'alef. A song, talking about poetry, meaning this could very well mean Shira Shirim. This could mean Kohelet, the poetry that he wrote. I don't understand, though, the numbers, how he got to Chameshet Alafim, and we'll leave it there. We could say that when we open up Kohelet and Shira Shirim, we don't have 5,000 sayings. So some of the later commentators say there were other Sfarim that Shlomo published. However, throughout history, throughout the Galut, we lost some of them, and we don't have them to ourselves. The Tanakh continues talking about the great wisdom of Shlomo. Pasuk Yud Gimel, verse 13. Vayidaber al ha'etzim min ha'erez asher ba'levanon v'ad ha'ezov asher yotzei bakir vayidaber al ha'beima v'la'of al ha'remes v'al ha'dagim. Okay, so here we're learning about something special. What does it mean, Vayidaber al ha'etzim? So please look together with me with Rashi in Lesource Hay. Can you share with him, sir? Thank you. You have one, sir? So Rashi says, what does it mean he's speaking about the Eitzim? What does Shlomo know here at nature in the forest that we don't know? So Shlomo Melech, Rashi explains, I think it's based upon Chazal, Ma refuat kol achat. Ve'etz, okay? Each tree can be used maybe for a different medicine, natural medicines for healing different illnesses. Maybe it's dissolved and made into minced into a medicine for instance. Or he would also know ve'etz ploni afela binyan. What type of wood from what tree is ideal for construction? Velita bekarka plonit. Which type of, let's say, fruit trees are expertise to be planted and developed in a type of soil? He would know the soils, he would know the trees. V'chein, so too, ala beima ma refuata. So you thought only in California did veterinarians begin the world? And no, Shlomo was a veterinarian. He would know what medicines would be good for what different types of animals. Vikar giduleh machaleh. Also, what are the main things we use for feeding animals? He would be an expert, Shlomo Melech, all about these matters. So we're going to see the judgment. He was there. We spoke about yesterday, the day before. He was given the power of judgment, of judging, to bring peace to people, to bring justice to people. Without a doubt, that's mentioned first. Because like you say, that's probably first and foremost.
I think he's talking about
He gave him a heart to understand. He gave him wisdom to write all these things. So there are books that we no longer have that apparently fits the...
One of the kings.
we have a lot of things that were not written. The book of Divrei Yamim. There are many historical books that were written by the secretaries of the kings that we no longer have. It's not the Divrei Yamim that we have in our Tanakh.
One of the books was one of the kings right after Shlomo.
Rechavam.
No.
Go ahead.
Took the book and hid it.
So that's Yoshiao, the king that put into Gniza about healings. The Mishnah says the end of chapter 6 in Masechet Psachim, Yoshiao the king, that he hid these things, and he had for several reasons why he hid those things. That's what Yoshiao says. I did. It says at the end of the pasuk regarding which trees, from the Erez, which is in the Lebanon, and the Azov, which some say is the hyssop, or commonly called in Arabic, Zatar. The Zatar. Some say the Azov, you know what the Zatar is? People put, it's a green spice. People like putting it on the hummus or things of that.
They have this Lebanon, the white stuff that comes on, or sometimes the hummus, on top of the hummus, they even have sabra, it has it come ready made.
So why does the prophet note the Erez and the Azov? So in the same Rashi that we're looking at here in verse 13, Rashi says, asks, Umara mitzora liter bagavosha begvoim ubanamuksha benemuchim. Why does the Torah, when the Torah mandates a person who has leprosy, how to go through a pure process of purification, as the Torah teaches us in Vayikra chapter 13 or 14 or 15, maybe 15, I forgot where, okay, that he has to take an eitz erez ve'ezov, and he puts it together, and that's being put into the blood from a bird and then sprinkled on. Why are we using the tallest tree? The erez is noted. There are many types of arazim, right? And the lowest, this little bush called the ezov, okay? Vi'al ha'of. He's asking this question. Why is the Torah using this? Umara ze liyot kasher b'shchita b'siman echad v'ze b'shnei simanim v'dagim v'chagavim b'lo klum. Shlomo understood the secrets of Torah that were not revealed. Why is the purification of a leper through the taking also of the erez tree and the hyssop tree? Why is it that which behemoth are kosher for eating and which are not? Okay, why do you, in some of the shechita, do you need one siman to be cut and others two? And as far as fish, he knew the understandings where the Torah didn't bother telling us what we call ta'amei mitzvot, the reasons behind the mitzvot. That's what Rashi, in the name of the Midrash, says here regarding his wisdom, regarding the trees, the animals, the birds, and the fish. Gentlemen, as years go by and decades go by, we can understand that this most outstanding figure, the King of Israel, who is so distinguished in his knowledge of godly matters, in his knowledge of natural matters, of science, that it's causing a bang in the world, even though there's no WhatsApp, no internet. But you know, you see the guy back there from India? He's traveling thousands of kilometers to sell spices. And there is a path connecting Europe, India, to the Middle East. And people here, you know, to sit down and smoke his pipe, take a rest from selling things. Hey, where? There's a king that knows what? What is it causing? Curiosity. So the Tanakh says in Pasuk Yudaled, verse 14, Vayavo mikol ha'amim, representatives from various nations, so many nations, they're coming lishmo et chokhmat Shlomo, meit kol malchei ha'aretz asher shamu et chokhmato. Okay, the kings of nations have curiosity, and they want to know what's going on. The Netziv Volozhin, based on a Gemara, explains that they would purposely come during Chol HaMoed Sukkot, okay, in order to bring gifts to the Holy Temple when it's built. And here, Shlomo reading Kohelet or Shir HaShirim and explaining this and explaining all these type of things. So it's having an impact. And of course, this goes with the central idea that Am Yisrael is the center, the heart of the nations of the world. They're going to have an impact as far as bringing light, truth, justice, values to the world. Okay? I heard a clip from Rav Shmuel Eliyahu, and now I understand better what I heard from him when the war broke out, when he was Shabbat in Beit El. His son, who's a minister, had a meeting, a Zoom meeting, with a dignitary of the Italian government. I don't know if you're aware, but according to what I heard here, the Italian birth rate is the lowest, perhaps in Europe. The lowest in Europe. Israel is of the highest in the world. In a few generations from now, all you're going to have in Italy is an old age home for old people if they don't have children. And the Arab rate is going down, is decreasing. So too in Africa, that's what he said. He knows statistics, Rabbi Shmuel. The Muslim population in the world is not like what it was formerly. Number two, in Africa also it's going down. Only in Israel is it going up. So this Italian dignitary says, we need Israel for values, for family, for love, for bringing children into the world. He said that to the minister of Israel, Rabbi Shmuel Eliyahu's son. Why am I mentioning it here? Because it's clear. Curiosity of the nations begins already during the time of Shlomo. During the time of Shlomo. Furthermore, let's now go on and see what's happening. Now we're going to learn about international relations, in fact. Pasuk Tedvav, verse 15. Do you see it? Vayishlach Hiram melech Tzor.
Which parak, hey?
Et avadav el Shlomo, ki shama, ki oto mashchu lemelech tachad avihu, ki ohev haya Hiram leDavid kol hayamim. We know in Lebanon, which is part of the inheritance, we think, of Asher, there's a very wealthy king there. Why do I say wealthy, even though the Tanakh doesn't mention it? Because he has a raw material that anyone and everyone would need, and that is lumber. That is building, that is enabled to give you construction. They have the eras of the Lebanon, the cedars. So, look, Hiram hears, and he already knew King David, it says here, that Solomon is the one replacing his father David. And Hiram already had a good connection with David. What develops from this? Vayishlach Shlomo Hiram Neimor. He uses the post office, and he sends, we're now reading verses 7 Yud Zayin. Okay, we see here that Hiram sends a message. What does he offer? Verse 17. Atayadate David Avdi. I'm sorry, Hiram, the opposite. Shlomo sends to Hiram. Notice, and this is very important for this, the upcoming halachic matter. Shlomo is initiating what we're going to see in a moment. It will be a pact, a treaty. And we would like to involve ourselves in analysis. Is it okay to make a treaty? Is it just an economic treaty? Is it more than that? Does Hiram represent a nation that is idolatry serving or not? So this we'd like to clarify as we study this right now. Atayadate David Avi, you knew my father. Ki lo yachol livnot bayit l'shem Hashem Elokav. Why couldn't my father build the holy temple? Mipnei milchama shesvavo. He was busy with war in and around the Middle East, in and around Israel. Ateit Hashem otam tachat kapot raglav. Very special expression. Now, all these nations that were fighting Israel were under the feet of Shlomo, of David, meaning he's on the threshing floor, he's on top, he's high up, and the nations are under him, and now there's peace. Pasuk Yudchet V'atai, now, Hiniach Hashem Elokai li misaviv. For me, God has allowed me to have peace around me. No nations are problematic. For instance, Ein Satan, Ve'ein Pegara. Okay? There are no satanic forces. There are no meaning enemies. There's no one that's raising a threat to the Republic of Israel led by Shlomo. And now, the famous pasuk, I'm ready. V'hineni omer, and behold I say, Livnot bayit l'shem Hashem Elokai. Meaning it's time. The time has arrived to build a house for the sake of God. Kasher diber Hashem el David avi lemor. This is exactly what God instructed my father. What did he say? Bincha asher etein tachtecha al kisecha hu yivneh habayit lishmi. Okay, David Shlomo shares with us right now the prophecy. Was it to Natan Navi, if I'm not mistaken? And that is that although David is not allowed to do so, but who will be able to build the Beit HaMikdash? And that is Shlomo. This is the prophecy of God to David. If you remember, when he had a baby with Bathsheba, he says, Hinei ve'nolad lecha, hu ya'ish minucha v'nichoti lo mikol oivav. And that was apparently told to Natan the prophet, and that was in even in Divrei Yamim Aleph, in Perikaf Bet, and it says, he will build a house for me. It's interesting that Shlomo, in a letter, shares in his correspondence to the king noble things that God told his father. Okay? Apparently, there's a basis for this. There was already some sort of mutuality, some sort of mutual respect between King David and Hiram. What is Shlomo interested? Continuing this. And we like to try to find out what's going on. Okay? Pasuk Kaf. And now he's making a request. Let's make a deal. What's the deal? Verse 20. V'ata, and now, tzaveh. Command. V'ichratu li arazim min Lebanon. I want you to command, meaning to your workers, your employees. I want you for the purpose of construction to cut down cedar trees from the Lebanese famous cedar trees. Vavada yu mavadecha. I'm going to send my workers, and they're going to be with your workers. Uschar vadecha tein lecha. I don't want a freebie. Whatever their monthly cost of working in the forest for cutting down trees, I want you to send me the bill. Okay? You want to jack up the price? No problem. Does Shlomo have a financial problem? Wealthy, very wealthy. Okay? Ki ata yadata. Now listen to this machma. Look at this compliment. Ki ata yadata, you know, or you knew. Ki ein banu ish yodeh lechrot eitzim katzidonim. Wow. Sidon, commonly called in English Sidon, is a Lebanese port, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know how many tens of kilometers it's inland from the present border. But here it's very clear that the Sidonim, the people living in Sidon, by the way, if you open up Breshit chapter 10, you find out that Sidon is the Bechor of Canaan. Oh, really? Okay? And this southern port of Lebanon, it's a southern port, even though later on another great port was developed historically called Tzor, which is called Tyre, if I'm not mistaken, Tyre. Okay? They too are one of the kings of Tzor, meaning Sidon. In any event, the people of Tzor, the people of Sidon, they are high in talent as far as chopping down trees. And this is the pniyah he's asking to him. Before we get more into this, gentlemen, I would like to ask you in question number 3, okay? Is Israel allowed to make a treaty with the king of Tzor? To be a correction, a typo? Or is it possible to make a treaty? Well, what's the problem? Look at letter Zayin on our source sheet. In Moshe Rabbeinu's speech in Devarim Perek Zayin Pasuk Bet, David Hayes, read it for us. Unitanam.
Unitanam Hashem. I can read the Hashem's name. Unitanam Adonai Elohecha lefanecha v'hikitam hacharim otam lo tichrot lahem brit v'lo tichanam.
Okay, lo tichonem. A very classic pasuk that Moshe Rabbeinu delivers the speech to Israel from God's mouth and said that God's going to deliver before you them. Who is them? And v'hikitem, and you're going to smite them. Who is them? Hacharim tachrim otam, wipe them out totally. Lo tichrod lahem, again lahem, the pronoun them. Do not establish with them a brit. V'lo tichonem, and don't give them chanaya. Allow them to rest, park here, and live here in the land. The subject of these prohibitions is who? Canaanite nations. So is Mr. Hiram, the king of Tzor, isn't he one of the Canaanite entities? Is he not an entity that has idolatry? And if that's the case, shouldn't it be banned or prohibited to make a brit, a treaty, a pact with them? Let's see what the Rambam writes in letter Chet. We're talking about the Mishnah Torah here, of course. Hilchot Avodat Kochavim, the laws of idolatry. Do you see it? Perek Yud, Halacha Aleph. That's where I'm reading from, that's right. And the Rambam brings, based on the Gemara from this pasuk, of course, quote, Ein kortim brit l'shiva amamim. We're not allowed to establish a brit with these 7 nations. Kedei shenaseh imam shalom. So we make peace with them. V'naniach otam, and allow them lavod avodat kochavim. We're not allowed to make a pact treaty, peace treaty with them, and of course, subtly allow them to continue their ways of idolatry. By the way, where are we talking about? Not Denmark.
In Israel.
Obviously, we're talking about the land of Israel. Shene'emar, the Rambam brings the sources, doesn't just write laws without sources. Quote, Lo tichrot lembrit. So, in what context can we make a pact with them? The Rambam writes, Ela rather, yachzaru me'avodatam, o yargo. Either they stop going Sunday morning to their mass churches, whatever you know what I'm talking about, or they have to be killed. V'asur l'rachem alehem, and we're not allowed to have mercy on them. Shenemar v'lo techonem. Okay, that's enough for me right now, reading the law of Hilchot Avodah Zarah. But I want to ask you, not from a halachic, religious law. I would like now to probe on the national scene. On a national scene, let's leave idolatry right now alone. Can we, on a national scale, make a treaty, a peace treaty, with someone like Tzur? The Rambam brings this elsewhere in look at source Tet. Rambam, and look where we're bringing now from. The end of this Mishnah Torah, Hilchot Melachim. You see that? The Rambam, Hilchot Melachim, Perek Vav Halacha Aleph. Rambam writes unequivocally, Ein osim milchama im adam ba'olam ad shekorim lo shalom. The Rambam's approach, it's machloket rishonim in the Gemara. Every entity we approach, no matter if it's a voluntary war or a mandatory war, we must first call out for peace. Milchemet reshut or milchemet mitzvah. Shene'emar, and he brings the pasuk. Ve'im ishlim, I'm skipping the middle of line 2. And if they made peace with you, v'kiblu sheva mitzvot, and they accepted the 7 Noachite laws, shenitztavu b'nei Noachalem, ein orgim hem neshama. We're not allowed to kill them. Rather, what should we do? Varim lamas. They should be taxed. Shedamar, and he brings the psukim. Kiblu lemamas. If they accepted taxation, velo kiblu avdut, not to be in servitude. O shekiblu avdut, velo kiblu amas. Or they accepted servitude, but not to pay taxation. We don't listen until they receive both of them. So it seems so far that vis-a-vis this entity called the king Hiram, the king of Tzur, which is Sidon and Tzur, if we know biblically, going back to the children of Canaan, that they are Canaanite entities, then we're asking, how can we enter into such a relationship? Okay? How can we enter? Okay? Do you know who writes this question? Tosfot. Look at the last source down below. Right now in letter Yud, do you see? We have a Tosfot on the Gemara Mesechet Yevamot, Daf Kav Gimel, page 23, Amud Aleph. And Tosfot says the following. On a Gemara that answers the question regarding 7 Canaanite nations, Hahu b'shiva umoktiv. Okay? V'yim tomar. Tosfot asked the following question. Can you follow the Hebrew in Tosfot? V'hechi karat brit Shlomo im Hiram melech Tzur. That's exactly what we're asking. How in the world did he make a pact with the king of Tzur? Dichtiv, as it states, Vaychrotu brit Shnehem. We're about to read. Okay? In our, did we read that pasuk actually already? Can you find it where the actual Brit takes place? Here it is. Skip to pasuk Kavav, verse 26. Vashem natan chokhmah l'shlomo kasher diber lo. Vayish shalom, there's peace. Between who and who? Ben Hiram, uvein Shlomo. Last 3 words. Vayichretu verit shnehem. It's clear that they went ahead with an agreement. And Tosaf's asking, how is he allowed to do it?
Which nation is Hiram?
We said from Tzur and Sidon.
They're the Canaanites?
That's right. As you see in Bereshit chapter 15, when we go through the lineage of the children of Canaan, he's the Bechor. Sidon is the Bechor. And Tzur and Sidon are one and alike. They're the same thing. They're satellites. So, what's that?
They're not Canaanites in Eretz Yisrael.
Oh, so let's see if that is an answer. So the question is, let's read the top line. Vehechi karat brit Shlomo Hiram melech Tzur dichtiv vaychutu brit shneim. Vaketiv, didn't it state? Line 2, lo tichot lem brit v'lo techin. You're not allowed to make a brit with these Canaanites, nor allow them to be in Israel, etc. Uvechol ha'umot of the avodat kochavim ayri. You hear this? Ras Tosfot understands it's not limited to 7 Canaanite nations. It's applicable to any entity that does idolatry. Okay? Now, let's see. We have at least 2 answers of Tosfot.
1 second. Where was the border?
It could very well. It apparently the border we have right now doesn't include all parts of southern Lebanon. Okay? I'm showing you a picture now of central and southern Lebanon. Okay? This is today maybe the borderline between we have Rosh HaNikra and the Lebanese coast. The first coastal city we come to indeed is called Tzor, which they call Tyre in English. If we're going further in the direction of Beirut, we come to Sidon. Good parts of this are likely to be part of Nachalat Asher. Nachalat Asher has the northwestern side of this area, and apparently we're not ruling that area. There's an independent entity there. Here you see where Beirut is. Okay, in the first Lebanese war, we were very close to Beirut, and right now we're telling Hezbollah stay out of the war, because if you don't, we're going to bomb all the way over here. We're going to go all the way deep inside Beirut and bomb and take care. I'm sure the plans are, of course, there. We shouldn't really speak on the internet. We shouldn't tell the enemy what we're doing. You didn't hear anything, did you? Okay. Let's go to the first answer of Tosfot there, please. Do you see the end of line 2? V'yesh lomar, and there are some that say, number 1, the Shema lo asar ela kritat brit l'shem avodat kochavim. K'dichteh b'idach kra lo tuchot lehem v'lelohem brit. Oh, so answer number 1, what type of pact or treaty is prohibitive according to the Torah? If it's a treaty for the purpose of idolatry. Because that's really the content of the psukim that's talking about idolatry. And this pact is an economic pact, as we'll learn later.
It's the opposite, because
And-
it's what Beit HaMikdash.
But so it's clear to us that it's not in order to, why don't you bring in, let's import some idolaters and teach us in Yerushalayim. No, we're not talking about that. It's not a treaty with Hiram Melech Tzor in order to do idolatry. Answer 1. Answer number 2, Shema, line 4, or perhaps Hiram Melech Tzor, Ger Toshav haya. Or at the same time you might say, he's a Ger Toshav, namely, he doesn't do idolatry, he's accepted 7 Noachite laws. And it's interesting, why would Tosfot call him a Toshav? Because maybe he is sitting in northern Eretz Yisrael. A Toshav means a resident of the land of Israel. Why is he called a Ger Toshav? Because maybe he's really sitting in northern Eretz Yisrael, and right now I don't know if Israel is ruling it. Ve'od, a third answer, which I wrote number 2. Near Eli, it appears to me, Tosfot says, Delo mitzah kritat brit eladafka b'shiva umot. Maybe the prohibition of making an alignment, a pact, is with 7 Canaanite nations. Midichtiv gabe givonim Yoshua ulai. One second. Mashma de b'shar umot shari. He wants to prove from the Givonim and others that any nations outside the 7 base Canaanite nations, there's no prohibition of making a pact with them. And therefore, Tzor as well is not one of the 7. Who are the 7? We read it from the words of Divrei Hayamim every morning at the end of Psukei de Zimra. V'charoti mo abrit lateit et eretz ha-emori, ha-prizi,
Girgashi,
ha-girgashi, ha-yevusi, we skipped 1. Chiti, Emori, Prizi, Kanani, Chivi, Girgashi, and Yevusi. I think those are, if I pronounced it properly, brought from Divrei Hayamim, we say at the end of Psukei de Zimra, right? Those are the 7. Who's not on that list? Tzor is not. So maybe according to this answer, there's really no prohibition hovering over Shlomo in making a pact with Hiram Melech Tzor. So this gives us information, understanding why it wouldn't be forbidden. Let's continue learning in the text. What is the pact about? Okay? After saying that I'm going to provide you with my workers and pay for everyone, does Hiram want to get into this pact? Pasuk Kavala, verse 21. Vayikishma Hiram et divrei Shlomo vayismach mod. Well, he's very happy. He's very happy. He apparently is happy also about the fact that it's Kedai to know Shlomo. He's very wise, the man of justice, and this will be a continuation of his relationship with the Israeli king because he had a good relationship with David. Okay? Not only is he agreeing, but he's happy. Vayismach me'od. Not only is he happy, but even very happy. Vayomer, look at the answer. Baruch Hashem. You see the answer in verse 21? Baruch Hashem hayom asher natan leDavid ben chacham al ha'marav. This Gentile, what is he saying? Baruch Hashem. Tell me someone else in the Chumash that said Baruch Hashem.
Yitro.
You're right. Who else? It wasn't Lavan, was it? No. No, certainly not. But it would be Yitro. You're right. Baruch Hashem is Yitro. Who else? Is there someone else? Malki Tzedek also is blessing God. So look, I think this, now you understand where Tosha got the answer. Maybe he's a Ger Toshav. Where does Tosha know that he's a Ger Toshav? He proclaimed Baruch Hashem that God gave David a son so wise like Shlomo. What's that?
King of Moab, did you see that?
In which instance are you referring to?
They came to
Ehud ben Gera. When Ehud ben Gera went to assassinate the king of Moab, he made a similar statement. I think you're right. Interesting. Thank you. How did you know I wanted more water? Thank you, sir. Pasuk Kafpet. Let's see the details of the treaty. Vayishlach Hiram el Shlomo le'mor. Shamati et kasher shalachta elai. I got your correspondence. And he said, Kol chefzecha. Whatever you want, I'm going to do. Regarding what? Aleph. Batzei arazim. And number 2, Vatzei brashim. Okay? 2 types of wood that are ideal for what? For construction. Okay? Atzei arazim and Atzei brashim. The truth is, Shlomo is being offered a tip. Shlomo only asked for what? Lumber from Atzei Erez. What does it? You know what? I'm going to give you brosh as well. In other words, we know that the Arazim are special, unique, very tall trees. Beautiful trees, a lot of different types as well. Where the brashim, although they do grow in the Lebanese mountain area, they're not the broshim we have today. I see it's written here in Data Mikra, and it's much lower than the Erez tree, but it's a very strong tree. And what's special about the brosh is that you can produce straight beams that could be used for coating parts of the Beit HaMikdash, palaces, building, if you want to build a fleet of ships, Chel Hayam, for Shlomo Melech, and therefore the brosh. So I'm going to give you a tip. I'll provide you for Atzei brosh as well. You ask, I don't know what the brosh tree is. Look it up, you please tell me. Furthermore, let me ask you about transportation. How many trucks existed in those days? How will we transit the lumber from this Mediterranean? Exactly. Look at this. Pasuk Kav Gimel. Avadai yoridu min Lebanon yama. My workers will bring the lumber down from the Lebanese mountains to the sea. Vani asimim dovrot bayam. I'm going to build what we call rafsodot. I'm going to build rafts.
Cyprus.
Cyprus?
Yeah. Cyprus?
Cypressus, right. That's the Latin word. I see it's written here as well. Okay. I'm going to provide rafts in order to what? Transport all the lumber. You'll send your rafts. We'll meet, I don't know, in the Haifa port or somewhere, halfway, doesn't say. V'nipatztim sham. What will I do? Linapetz means the lumber is going to be tied up. And I'll bring it over to your rafts, and you'll be able to unlock the ties that are holding them together. Vata tisa, and you'll carry them. Vata taset chefzi. Latet lechem beiti. I won't forget my first political science class in university. And I have this Roman Catholic Italian professor. And I'm sitting there, half Gentiles, half Jews. I didn't really feel comfortable. And he says on his first day of political science, he says, gentlemen, there's no free lunch in the world. There's always something tied to this. Here, Mr. Hiram said, King Hiram says, you're not going to get this for free. There's going to be barter here. You're going to supply my budget of lechem. Like we said in yesterday's shiur, lechem doesn't only have to be bread, but it could be meals, porridge, other things, different types of cakes, and so on and so forth. So we'll continue, God willing, this shiur tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem, here.